A lot of us are just trying to figure out this problem of continued happiness day to day. Because it seems like we'll have one day where everything just feels right internally, things will line up, and everything's going great. And then the next day, something's off. Things aren't going well. We feel unfulfilled. We feel a gap internally, like something's missing. So we have to remember that we are not our thoughts. So this goes to that spiritual principle of the observer versus the observed, which I really liked thinking about and really kind of projected me to a new place of thinking as I got into this spiritual journey and was trying to figure out how to stack days of happiness on top of each other in what seemed like to just be like a cycle that couldn't be consistent. And this observer effect is pretty simple, and you start to see it when you do meditation, which is, who is this person thinking all these thoughts, and what am I in relation to them? And you start to see that if you observe your thoughts, because you can think about like, why am I thinking these thoughts? Then it becomes natural to think about, well, who is the person that is actually thinking, why am I thinking these thoughts? So it's essentially a strange dynamic when you first start to think about it, but when you do, and you start to realize that there is this observer, this other you watching these thoughts, you start to think that you actually, at some core level, some deeper level, you are not those thoughts. And then your mind evolves to, well, why am I so impacted every day by this freaking unending train of thoughts, right? So what's interesting to think about in this context also is all of these thoughts are always related to something in the past or something in the future, right? So you're either going over these events in the past that happened to you, whether they're negative or positive. A lot of times it's like, this happened to me and I have some emotional attachment to it, or this good thing happened to me and I want it to happen again. Or you're in the future thinking this would be my ideal life, or it could be negative also, like, I'm not good financially, or my job's not going well, and where is this going to take me, right? So we're always, a lot of times in this thought process, we're in one of these two places and we're not present. And that's why this concept that you hear people say of just be present actually has some merit to it. And the more you think about it, that state of being in the present has no history attached to it. It has no outcome attached to it. And it's this place of deeper connection to something bigger. Call it your observer, call it your higher self, call it your soul, higher realms, whatever you want to call it. In that place where your mind is not crowded with thought, there is clarity. And there's clarity because you have removed the circumstances of the past and the projections of the future. And in a place of clarity, you can move based upon freedom from those things. And that's such a big deal because we frame decisions in the context of these opinions and thoughts and emotions we have about the past and these things that we're trying to achieve. And a lot of times, because we're so tied to the thoughts and emotions of that event, we end up actually putting ourselves in places we don't want to be because our decisions are framed by the past and the future. And so when we're removed from all of that, we can actually make a decision without influence, which is the best way to make a decision, without influence. So this roller coaster of human emotions that we have, always on the past and the future, we can start to level out. The waves of this ride will start to level out, and when we come to a place of being present, we don't feel that push and pull. And so let's get back to just being happy. When we're in this place of presence, and when we don't have thoughts and emotions tied to these events of the past and future, our state is much more regulated, our emotional state, right? Because we're not having regrets about the past or wishing certain things in the past or in the future or thinking about outcome. That's another one a lot of us do, is just thinking about outcome, right? So in this present place, we're just there, connected to something bigger, in a place where we can make better decisions on that connection. And that connection can be driven by excitement as opposed to a thought or emotional state that is not where we are right now. So I also just want to say, this is kind of when you hear people talk about the distinction between the mind and the brain. So the brain is this human thing that's bouncing all around nonstop. And the mind is that greater part of us that is simply being and simply feeling and not in a reactionary state. It's timeless, right? It's not in a reactionary state to some future outcome or past event. So the summary of all this is that in that present state, our soul, essentially, our higher self, our observer, is working for us from a place not tied to these constraints of time that we're putting on ourselves. And that's where we want to be. We want to be working in this beautiful place that's tied to our energy and tied to our excitement, and liberated from this running mind that's causing this bounce up and down of feelings. And that's where we find happiness.